Newstrike, who are we? We are a publicly traded LP in Canada. We trade on the TSX out of Toronto on the Venture Exchange. We have a market cap in and around the $300 million range. And the hope today is with my colleague Dennis is we're going to just give you a bit of a flavor for who we are, where we're going, and what the future may hold. Oops, let me go back. So, we started the business about 4 or 5 years ago when we were licensed, and kind of took the position, if you can't be everything to everybody at the beginning, what do you want to focus on? So there was a lot going on in the medical market. We saw the Canadian recreational or adult use market opening up, and had a pretty good sense that that was going to be a pretty significant market size. So we chose to get involved into that, and that's where we've put our focus over the last little while. What we wanted to do too is, if you're going to go into that kind of market, you want to make sure you're differentiating yourself and doing what you do well, and you do it consistently well. So a few things we focused on. One was in a market where there's a lot of competitors and a lot of people coming into the space. There are some folks who are focusing on the medical side, some on the recreational, some trying to do both. We wanted to make sure that we were differentiating ourselves. So as you look at a number of our competitors, there are a lot of names that are medical sounding. There is a sea of green in the logos. We consciously wanted to differentiate ourselves. So the brand that we have is Up Cannabis. The company is Newstrike, but we chose a color that was differentiated and a few other things that helps to differentiate us as we go through the market development. So that's us, and that's how we are setting ourselves up. Our goal, just from the starting point, is if you want to differentiate yourself and you want to have a goal where you're heading towards. In Canada, it's not obviously as pervasive down here, but there's brands like Tim Hortons, Roots, that are just synonymous with Canada. It'd be analogous to us saying we want to have the brand like a Dunkin' Donuts, a Gap, so that it's when you think of the brand when you're going into a retail outlet in Canada, that brand is in every market, and it is pervasive, and people think about what that is, and they know what they're getting. Right? You know what you get when you go into McDonald's. You know what you get when you go into a Gap. So that was part of the philosophy. The other thing we wanted to ensure we were focusing on is that, as is normal in a kind of a burgeoning new industry, it will be, as we heard this morning, a result of the fundamentals that come out of the business. But in the meantime, how do you get there is slow, steady, and remain focused. There's schizophrenia clearly in the marketplace as to what people want to be and what's going to be the next great thing. We wanted to make sure we were trying to do our best to avoid that. Creating shareholder value obviously was a big thing. We wanted to focus on our market and grow the heck out of it as best we could. So we know the opportunity is immense, and if you want to create that consistent product and consistent offering, your baseline has to be solid. And we chose these 4 pillars as the things that we wish to develop our business on, and as you do that, that gives you the opportunity to grow. So innovation, distribution, branding, and production. We're going to talk about each of those in a little more detail as we go, but our thought was each of these individually, as you folks all know, are important and significant to the success of a business. Combined and doing them all well creates real value, and that's where we were trying to get ourselves going. If you believe in the old adage, and we do, that success comes from 1% strategy and 99% execution, we know what our strategy is, we know where we're going, and now our focus is on doing that and doing it well. So a little bit about where we are today. Now, We have in the center, you can see kind of our current position. We have two facilities. One is extremely large, one is a smaller one. I'll tell you about that in a quick second. But if you start from the center and you say, all right, we've got 40,000 kilograms of capacity. In pounds, that's kind of 100,000 pounds equivalent. We have a solid financial base at the bottom. We're sitting with a bunch of cash, and we are, for the most part, our production facilities are ready to go. We've invested the cash, and we're still sitting with $100 million worth of cash. On the production side, we have two facilities, the Brantford one and the large one in Niagara. So Brantford was where it started. Brantford is just a small town 40 minutes outside of Toronto. And it's a small, focused facility, lends itself to product development, to craft type growing, where you can look at specific things. And it's a top quality production facility. The growth is going to come from the next piece, which is the Niagara facility. It is large. It has capacity for over 40,000 kilograms. The first phase is up and going, and we have been producing product and stockpiling it in anticipation of the Canadian market opening up, which it did in October. So it's cranking along, and the doubling of that is going to be finished in the next couple of months. So that's taking it to from 20,000 today, that is live, to 40,000 tomorrow in the next couple of months. You've heard, I'm sure, in the Canadian marketplace, the demand has far outstripped supply, and that's a little bit of that hyperbole we were talking about before. There's a number of folks saying they could do a lot of things. They're not quite there. We're pretty much there and pounding along. On the distribution side, we have. It's obviously a very regulated marketplace in Canada, and it's by province, and in some cases it's by city or jurisdiction within each province. We have relationships and license agreements with all of the large provinces in Canada, which essentially puts us nationwide. And we have retail partnerships with specific retailers that are in place in certain provinces. Alberta, for example, has chosen not to have all sales go through a government agency, but through retail outlets that are owned privately. So how do you get that to the marketplace? You have to have a totally different model, and should it be corporate, franchise, all that has to be thought through. And those partnerships we have in place with folks who are already in existence in those markets. So we were able to kind of start up like that. On the innovation side, what is the future? It is a phased rollout in the marketplace in Canada by legislation. So things like the oils and the vapes and edibles and such are coming, and there will be a phased rollout of that becoming legal. So what we're doing is making sure all the innovation is going on in behind the scenes, so that the day it's legal, like with the raw bud, that we're ready to go. So that is part of what that Brantford facility is used for. We are going through a setup of joint ventures in order to do that. Don't need to use our own capital. Edibles, for example, we have a joint venture in place with a company that does that and is well known in Canada for that type of thing. So working together with them, and we bring one piece of the equation, they bring the other, and we've got a great end point. And on the branding front, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, because it is obviously important to create that value for the company and the focus for which customer is coming to you versus somebody else. So we'll talk about that. Our brand is up, as I mentioned. There are certain restrictions as to what you can do and what you can't do from a marketing standpoint in Canada. We are associated with with a iconic rock band in Canada called the Tragically Hip. They would be a cross amongst if you looked at a U.S. equivalent cross between a the Eagles crossed with a Bruce Springsteen crossed with somebody else. So, in terms of Canada, everybody knows the Tragically Hip. They're probably not known anywhere else outside of Canada, but they are there. So for our market, they've been fabulous ambassadors, they're shareholders, and they have helped us move things forward. Our production assets. So talked about this a little bit, but just to give you a quick flavor. So this used to be an orchid facility in Niagara. We bought it for $1.50. It was essentially, it was so cheap, and it was opportunistic at the time. This is where our current Niagara 20,000 square feet is, or 20,000 kg capacity is, that we're blowing up to 40. So the production is state of the art. Our cost set up on a per kilogram basis is at least as good, and for the most part better than a lot of our competitors. It's a pretty large facility once it's all done, just under 500,000 square feet. There'd be 1 million plants in there once it's all done. We use one of the reasons why our cost per kg is so low is we have invested in automation. So we have what's called a Dutch tray system. You may or may not be aware of that, but it is what one would consider to be state of the art in terms of flexibility and economics for developing and growing all of the plants. So everything is as automated as possible, including such things as a talking floor. So we're when there's something that is needed in one tray, we're informed quickly, so it can be dealt with very quickly. Last, on the right side, you see just the background principles, which are kind of the backbone of how we get to where we are. We talked earlier, somebody did, about the importance of consistency, and I don't think when you're developing a brand, one of the most important things is that consistent top quality piece, and we've been very focused on that. And in order to get that and make sure that the customer gets what they're expecting all the time, you need to start employing these things. So. Part of that, 438, I don't know where that number came from, but we have quality control is certainly very important for us to make sure that consistency. So just give a flavor. We have a process that before every harvest is completed, there's 438 process checks and quality checks that are put forward. Is this you, Dennis, now? I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Yep. Thanks, Steve.
He'll be back.
Yep, he'll be back. So, one of the things that, thank you. From the very beginning, we're moving into the recreational market last October, and what became very apparent was that this is a new market for many people. So legalization, it's a brand new industry. We wanted to make things as simple as possible for the consumer. And so by doing that, we have access to hundreds of strains. I know there's other LPs in the medical side that have dozens of strains available. We focused on 5 from our launch. These are the 5 most, most consumed categories that we found from our research, looking at other markets like your Colorado market. And so we launched with those 5 strains just to keep things simple for the recreational consumer. Today, the legalized market is dried blood, and also allows for oils as well as single-serve flour. The vast majority of the market in Canada today is dried flour, and so that's what we're shipping. We'll have oils out shortly. We'll also have pre-rolls. The market gets really interesting when we start to go into later this year, when the edibles legislation is going to be enacted, hopefully by the fall. And that's really where we have an opportunity to start to stand out and differentiate. And so we're preparing for that. As Steve mentioned, we announced a joint venture with Neal Brothers about a month ago. Neal Brothers is a very successful premium food company in Canada. They got a number of great products, natural ingredients, organic. We're working with them to develop some edibles for the market. Very excited about that venture. I think it's a unique one in Canada, the only one that I've seen of its kind. In addition, we also have a partnership with Green Tank Technologies on vape pens. And if you think about, as we move into these different categories, edibles, pens, beverages. A lot of people, of course, see that as the future of the industry, but it's also, really good in terms of building your brand and building your margin as a business. And that's really what's going to protect the shareholder value over the long term in this business. For example, on the vape pen side, that's a great opportunity in terms of just you have to deliver consistent experience for consumers. They're going to see your brand every day, and so we chose a partner that is very committed to testing their product and ensuring that it's 99+% quality in terms of the failure of those pens. And so we want to partner with the best companies we can to deliver a consistent experience for the consumer. And as Steve said, a big part of what we're doing and setting the infrastructure in place comes down to building great brands. We believe that's where it's going to be creating sustainable value into the business. When we created Up, we wanted to build a brand that was approachable and fun, really well situated for the Canadian consumer as well as the rec consumer in general. But this is our first brand, and it's not necessarily going to be our only brand, but that's the first brand that we've come out with. As in Canada, the legislation is pretty restrictive in terms of marketing activity, but we think over the past summer, we were one of the most active LPs in terms of promoting and getting a mind share for the Up Cannabis brand. We hosted a number of events. We sponsored the Canadian Country Music Awards, and we got national coverage in a number of publications for the activities that we've done. And so I think more so than any of the other recreational brands in Canada, we are synonymous with the music industry in Canada. And a big part of that, of course, is our partnership with the Tragically Hip, as Steve mentioned. They're not just celebrity ambassador or endorsers, they're shareholders and partners in our business. They helped come up with the 5 strands that we launched. The names of those products are all kind of influenced by some of their more popular songs. They have a very loyal and large fan base in Canada and a great legacy, and we're really trying to build up to live up to that legacy and be an iconic brand in itself.
So just to pull a few things together here in the last couple of minutes. So this is the Canadian geography I mentioned before, the methods by which we're getting distribution across Canada and all the provinces. Just to illustrate, these are all of the various provincial distribution methods, and we are in all of them. So everyone is unique, and it was a challenge to get there, but we've got there. This is a unique slide we just wanted to illustrate for you to give you a sense of the Canadian marketplace. So look at the outer band where you say we got 113. So these are the folks, the licensed producers in Canada that exist today. There's 113 LPs. Of those, 39 have at least 2 provincial agreements. If you think back to that map, it's pretty widespread. 39 have 1. Those that have 2 are only 29. So those that are in 7 key provinces in Canada, there's really only 7 of us. And we are one of them. So it'll just illustrate the methods or the extent we've gone to make sure that we're covering all of the bases. Because once you get the distribution agreement, then it becomes self-fulfilling. As you're growing the product, you have a place to put it. And quickly. You look at the chart at the bottom, at the left side then, hard to see some of those numbers, I know, but if you look at the capacity and the market value of those 7 that are in there, you'd clearly say there's a lot of much bigger competitors that we're dealing with, but we're in that group of 7, and we would say we're certainly punching above our weight, and we're proud of that. Also says we're clearly undervalued, so you guys have to move the stock price up. We're well funded to execute all of this. There are the 4 pillars we talked about. We're sitting with a lot of cash on hand, and we're not consuming cash. We are actually throwing off cash. Cash is king. Another view of that, these are a number of the Canadian and some US listed companies. Of our value, you can see us as the second one, 38% of our value is essentially the value of our cash. So clearly there's upside in the way we feel in what that value is as we start rolling this out further and further and further. Last couple of pieces. On the innovation front, we've talked about these, so this is just a summary page, is we have been going through 2018 and into 2019 with a number of transactions. We know what our capacity is, we know where we're going in terms of those next steps, in terms of vapes and oils and edibles and beverages. We are, as you see, and we've talked about, growing our relationships with partners, so we're doing it with those who know their part of the business extremely well and far better than us. We bring a piece to the table, they bring another, and the how is through those partnerships. Everybody talks about the international expansion. We heard about that a little bit more this morning. Clearly, there is going to be a time and a place for that. Our position is there will be a time and a place for that. The Canadian model for recreational adult use is one that probably will be used or looked to as other markets open up. But other markets are not open up for the adult use right now. They are more and more open as it relates to medical. Our focus is on the adult use. So as they come open, we will be ready to go. We are strategically looking at opportunities elsewhere outside of Canada, so we're preparing for that. But is it a focus of ours right now? No. We will be there when the time is right, and we're making sure we have a bit of a war chest to do that. This is a lot of noise just to illustrate how much activity went through in 2018 in order for us to be prepared to be where we are today. This is our management team. You know, we talked about one of the other adages I would believe in is you don't bet on the horse, you bet on the jockey. And we have a lot of good jockeys in our business. We have a senior management team who are extremely seasoned, experienced, and proven themselves elsewhere, and they're proving themselves again as we drive our business forward successfully. And pull it all together. Just remember, we're focused on doing well. We're staying away from all the hyperbole in the marketplace, and we will be there. This is a doable thing for us to be. If you take our production at, say, a $5 kg, for sake of argument, value, then it's a $200+ million business as we stand today, growing into the future. And that's us. So thank you very much today. I think we're out of time for questions, but thank you for your time.